Is everybody enjoying the rain? That's over now.
Yeah, I guess it rained about 9 inches in Bale.
In
I
Hilo.
missed, I missed the Ben Lomond. I missed the whole thing because I was down in Santa Cruz.
Well, we got about 1.8 inches in Marina, which I'm happy for.
Yes, indeed.
I think the lower west side got about 5 inches.
Wow. Talking to people in Sacramento, and most of them had over 5. And the American River is starting to create problems with runoff. No surprise there.
All right, Doug, I think we are good to get going.
Alrighty then, let's kick into gear on this. Welcome everybody to our presentation on Strawbale Gardening. I'm very much looking forward to learning more about this myself, and very timely considering we're going into the rainy season to be thinking about this. So just a few housekeeping items before we start. We'd like you, I think in this session, it's okay to be unmuted. Okay, we'll see how it goes. And if you all want to ask some questions, you could raise your hand. That might be helpful, but we'll experiment with just keeping everybody unmuted. Oops, okay. Please do keep your video off. We'd appreciate that. Sometimes that can eat up bandwidth. You can use the speaker view. You can access that in the upper right or the gallery view. But if you use the speaker view, you'll be able to see whoever's actually doing the talking much better. So as we said, if you have questions, you can, raise your hand, raise your voice. We'll try to be fluid about this. But you can also use the chat window if you want to input a question there. And we'll take those as they come or potentially answer them at the end of the program. So LiveScript is on. So you should see a running written text of what's being presented verbally. If you have technical questions, please send them to me via chat. My name's Doug. And after class, we'll provide this presentation. In fact, actually, the way we're going to do that, I'll paste that link into the chat window, so you'll have it in just a moment. Okay, a few words about who we are. We're master gardeners.
Oh, has Doug frozen?
Doug has frozen.
Doug has frozen. Oh,
Sorry?
Can you say it again? You froze there for a minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the Master Gardening Program is part of UC Cooperative Extension. And the objective of our program is to provide research-based knowledge and information to home gardeners and on issues of horticulture, gardening, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices. So with us today are our instructors, Delise Weir and Anastasia. And Delise, could you go ahead and talk to the folks about your experience?
Well, I've been gardening for a long time, over 40 years, and I love to grow food. I want to teach everyone in the world how to grow a little bit of food. And I love flowers and herbs as well. I've been a florist. I've worked for a seed company. I've been a master gardener since 2014. And I really love to teach what I know. Anastasia?
I'm Anastasia, and I've been a master gardener since 2016. And I hope that you all will find this class interesting and informative today. One of the favorite things that I've learned being a master gardener is how to research gardening topics by accessing research-based information on the internet. And we're going to have a lot of links for you at the end of this presentation that I hope you will find useful. And I also wanted to thank all the folks who were able to donate and make a little donation to our program when they signed up and registered for the class. So thank you all so very much. And here we go.
But because we are all volunteer, this is an all volunteer program, the Master Gardeners.
Yeah, and it lets us do more classes.
Oh, and I wanted to just say, we are doing an experiment tonight. We are trying the open mic situation. We're trying to make it a little more natural to have a meeting with we have kind of a small group of people. So usually we just mute you and make you type in your questions and then answer them at the end, and it's a one-sided conversation. But today, if you have a question, let us know. Just speak up, or if you're shy, type it in. But we'll do our best to get to everybody's questions.
Very good.
All right.
Okay, so today we're going to learn about strawbale gardening, and it's just incredibly easy. So it's like, if you haven't done it before, get excited, because one, you don't have to huff and puff to get it done. It's very low energy investment because we're doing some passive techniques that will get this straw bale kicked off for us without us having to do a lot of work. We're going to give you we'll give you the information of everything that you need to get started, tips on how to maximize the success, but honestly, it's so easy. Everybody's going to succeed, I have no doubt. And then some creative applications of using straw bales in the garden. So next slide. So I think that it's something that everybody can use. Let's say you have a big garden, or you have a transient garden, or you have not very many places to garden at all. You can do it in a straw bale. You can just drag it around to that one sunny spot in the yard. You can do it over concrete. You can raise it up on pallets so that you can reach it without having to bend over a lot. It can be very, very versatile. You let the bale get saturated with rain. How easy is that? And then you throw some organic granular nitrogen on there, and it starts the conditioning process. All right, next slide. So I love this line, and it's not mine, it's Delisa's, but what is a straw bale garden? Well, it's crunchy on the outside and it's warm and moist in the middle. And it's just a great way to retain water in the middle of summer heat. Those straw bales will really help retain it. You can use it for 2 to 3 seasons. This is a picture of a straw bale that's, I think, between 2 and 3 seasons old. Is that correct, Delise?
Yeah, this one's probably 6 months old.
Oh, it is. Okay, so I thought it was, so it's probably been through 2 plantings. It's really very easy to open up and plant in that trench in the center, and yet it's still holding its form a little bit. So you can definitely get another round of planting out of it. That center area that you see is just everything that would make a bunch of roots on a plant. Very happy to be there. It's got this wonderful compost happening there. So it's just a slow composting process that you can plant in. That's basically what straw bale gardening is. Okay, next slide. So this is the cliff notes for how to do it, right? You place the bale, you condition it, you plant it with some plants, you harvest it, and then you compost it. It's pretty easy. So in the beginning, it's very tight and firm to begin with, and then it gradually breaks down over time. And depending upon what your goal is, some people maybe really want to use it for as many seasons as they possibly can. So they might try and put some additional binding around the outside of it just so it holds its shape a little longer. Other people may be anxious for that composting to just go to town because they would like to spread that out and turn it into their soil that they're trying to amend. So you've got options on what you want to do with that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So this is kind of a lovely picture, and it's showing us quite a bit of things are going on here. All right, so some of these straw bales have been placed in wood frames, and some of them are open, like the potatoes in the center. They're just ready to go. You've got some tubing and netting on the back and right-hand ones. That'll help keep out birds and flying insects. And then on the left side, you've got some trellising and some wire so that you could grow some peas or some beans or maybe some climbing squash on there. And then it looks like it's got carrots in the front. You can do cool season and summer crops in a straw bale. And what am I forgetting? Oh, the one tip that I would give you is that if you have a large vehicle that you're going to be transporting your bales home in, but it's not a truck, if you've got a camping tarp and a mask, you might want to wear that mask on the way home because these things can be a little shaggy and they can be a little messy in transport. So we spread out a camping tarp, throw them in the back. And then I actually rode home in an empty car with my mask on because it was kind of particulatey in the cars we were going along. So just something to think about. Okay, next slide.
If people have questions about how to transport straw bales safely, because they're bulky and heavy and large, we can talk about that. Just waiting for that question. Okay, so if there's one thing that you take away from this class, just think of straw. Just say straw over and over again and don't say hay, because you really want straw because it doesn't have any seed in it. And if you get hay instead of straw, you're going to have a chia pet in your backyard, and it's going to look like that bale right there. You can get them at just a variety of places. In the next slide, we've gone ahead and done a little research for you, different places in Santa Cruz and Monterey County, and the prices and their location. I was looking at primarily just the rice bales. You can also get wheat as long as it's straw. And I mean straw and not hay. The wheat will be a little bit tougher and won't break down as quickly, but the rice is something that we prefer using because it's really the softest. And as far as conditioning, it's the most effortless for conditioning. So you just get it going and you can, just condition it in the rain for a couple of months, and then February rolls around and you're ready to plant in it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to know where north is on your property, and that's pretty easy to do. You can just jump on any map program and use the satellite function and look at your property, and that the compass will be right on the map, and it will help you orient where north is. Here is a diagram showing you that you want to make sure that you've got a good 6 to 8 hours of sun. And so you're going to want to place that bale somewhere where you're going to get 6 to 8 hours of sun. And if you don't have 6 to 8 hours of sun, then there are workarounds for it. But if you've got a big enough yard that you can try and find that really sunny spot, that's a good place to put your bale. What else can I say about that? It's pretty. You can say that we're going into the darkest time of the year. So if you have a place in your yard that gets 6 to 8 hours now, it's probably going to get even more later. So that's a good thing to know. But look for where the shadows go this time of year, because parts that are really sunny in June can be really shady right about now.
And the other thing is, go ahead.
Joy asked a question about moving the bales. She wants to know the answer to that. So finish what you were going to say, and then I'll launch into that.
I was going to say that because you're going to be putting them out in November, it really is worthwhile to decide where you want that thing to go, because once it gets rained on, it's going to be a very heavy puppy, and it's not going to be very much fun to say, oh God, we had 3 days of rain and now I'd really like to move it 50 feet over that way. I want, when I get my bales, I kind of like to know where they're going to go. So no matter what happens, if I get distracted or a big rainstorm sneaks up on me, I know I've already got it in the right place.
And that is a really important point. Once they're soaked, they are not going anywhere because not only are they heavy, but they'll fall apart on you. So when you're moving them, you need to either hire a strong and youthful person to do it for you. That's the best way to do it. Otherwise, you want to use leverage to tip them on their ends, out of a car, out of a trunk, out of a truck. Preferably, you have access to a truck. Some places will deliver straw bales. So this is the hardest part, is getting the straw bale located and moved to where you want it. And then once you've got that done, all is well. So look for the high school student that needs a few bucks. But the other thing, if you have access to a hand truck, that's a really easy way to keep it on its end and then just roll it to where it needs to go. And then after that, you can kind of like rock it and turn it and move it and orient it the way you want. And that's the whole thing.
That is the whole
Very
thing.
logical.
So here we've got several examples of how you can lay out your straw bales. In the first picture, it's just like a couple of Legos lined up. And, we'd like to see those facing north to south in an ideal setting so that you're going to get the maximum amount, that row is facing south to north, so that you're going to get a maximum amount of sunlight on those rows. In the lower left picture, they're actually, what you could do there is you could enclose that entire center piece and you could fill it with soil, and you could use it as a raised bed container. And that's kind of an interesting thing that you can do. And then the third picture is a keyhole kind of a setup. And because the bales are 4 feet long, it's kind of a nice length because you can really quite easily reach into the halfway mark of the bale. Some people would, in that second picture, which is on the lower left, what some people consider doing is they could fill the center of it and use it as a raised bed. And then you could condition the bales and plant in them as well. Or you could leave them as they are and use them as a raised bed containing wall. And it'll hold up for a while. Okay.
We'll see some examples of that later. And this is actually more bales than I would ever want to fill in. This is a really good example of how to replace your lawn with something productive without digging in the dirt.
And you can see that there's cardboard underneath the straw bales in that picture. And we'll be speaking more about that. And it looks like we've got garbage bags underneath the Legos on the top picture. Doesn't that look like garbage bags almost to you? Or like, is that weed cloth?
Yeah, that looks like weed cloth to me. And
Okay.
if you're putting it on a deck, if you're putting it on a driveway, if you're putting it on some kind of surface that you don't want it to stain or that water will be a problem, then you might want plastic underneath. But in a lawn situation, cardboard's a good solution. And I wanted to point out that Harriet, I think I know Harriet from another organization, had somebody deliver her straw bales, and they placed it at an angle on something that was, not level ground. Level ground is really important. If the ground isn't level, then the straw bale, as it's decomposing, will succumb to gravity, and things may tip over or get wonky and fall apart quicker. So level ground is important too.
So here are some more arrangement ideas. And you'll notice in the first picture in the upper left that they have incorporated a soaker hose on top of the straw bales. And that's kind of important because part of the process of conditioning the straw bale is getting it really thoroughly saturated. And you have to continue to add water throughout the planting season. And particularly in the heat of summer, having a soaker hose can be a real nice way to accomplish that. You can see that there are some, it looks like they've got hog wire going over the top in sort of an arching, in an arching way over the bed. That could be additionally covered with some netting to keep birds out and maybe keep insects down. It could be used as a, if it was more to one side, you could use it to grow part of, to plant part of it with something that's growing up, right? And it could grow over that. If you grew it all the way over the way it is right now, then it would just prevent some of those plants from getting the sun that they need. In the next slide, we show how you can condition an existing raised bed on the upper right by placing a couple of bales in there. And then as they give up their composting goodness, then you can just amend that raised bed with them. And you still got your existing plants that are in that bed. So then in the lower left, we have almost a, I want to say greenhouse, and that's when cold frame. Thank you. Whoops. I knew I was going to get it eventually, I promise. So it's a cold frame. So what they've done is they've placed the bales around it, and they've put, it looks like it's maybe even just some wood with screening over it, and then place that on top. If you added a layer of plastic, depending upon what time of year it is, if it was in the colder season, then that would warm up real nicely, and you could do some seed starting in there. And then one of my favorite pictures in this slide is the last one, because this is an example of a water saving technique. And, you know, everybody in our neck of the woods is pretty conscientious about water right now, since we've been in a drought. And by putting them so closely together, they really will retain their water content even more than they would if they were placed sort of like in the frame above. But they will really hold water quite well. I mean, you're looking at them and you're thinking, you know, it feels pretty dry on the outside, but once you've got it conditioned and you really stick your hand in there, you'll be surprised how well it will retain water. Another thing.
Say, Anastasia?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Doug. I have a quick question. The picture on the bottom right, you can see the layers. It's like there's actually 4 layers of straw there. And it kind of makes me wonder if you just took the top 2 layers and the bottom 2 layers and make those separate. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but those are actually complete bales. And so if you look at the sort of waviness of the top of the bale, those are the ends of the cut straw, and we'll see it in the next slide. But that's actually one solid unit that has 3 baling wires or strings around it. And so if I were to knock one of those on its side, the entire thing would go.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's the same question. It still will break into layers. They'll just be vertically divided.
I'm losing you a little bit because you're freezing. Let's jump to the next slide and let me kind of lay out how we're.
Yeah. Just wondering.
To just speak to what Doug is saying, can I just speak to what Doug's saying? I think he's talking about opening up the bale and using flakes or chunks of the bale in different orientation. You do not want to open the bale. You want to keep the string on it through the lifespan until it's time to break it apart at the very end. So to do the technique we're talking about, you don't open it up and you don't break it apart.
Okay.
Take it away. And at the end of this slide, I'd like to talk about a question somebody brought out about rats and mice.
Oh, that's a very good question. And I have not turned on I'm not seeing the chat. So I need to fix that, because I'm pretending like nobody's asking or saying anything because I'm not reading any of it. So anyway, so in the upper inset here, you can see that we're looking at the the straw, and you always want to have it so the cut side is facing up. And in the picture below, on the left-hand side, you can see ridges in the bale. That is, in fact, the side of the bale where the straw is sticking up. And you want to always position your bale like that because you want the water to go through the straw. It's kind of like capillary action, right? It's going to be open and that water is going to go way down deep into that bale. The bale next to the left-hand one, the one that's on the right-hand side that has a hand on it, is on its side. And all that straw is running this way, right? So you don't want to try and situate that in your garden. You always want it like this. So all the little straws are sticking up and ready to accept the water and the nitrogen and some of the things that we're going to be putting in that bale. And the one way you can confirm it is looking for the ridges. It's like ruffles have ridges. Well, straw bales, when they're in the right position, they have ridges too.
So can I just point out that I started doing straw bale gardening well before I found out about the right orientation. And frankly, it works in any position. It will work. You just takes a little more to water it in and get it conditioned. So this is the perfect world, but you know, if you blow it, it's not the end of the world.
There you go. Okay, next slide, please.
So somebody wanted to know about rats and mice. Don't they live in there? Isn't that the perfect home for rats and mice? And the answer is no, not really. They don't do that. Maybe at the very, very end when there's roots and food bits in the composted parts. But I have never had a problem with rats and mice. I have had problems with gophers. Gophers will go up and into a straw bale as quickly as they'll go up and into your raised bed if you don't put some wire underneath. So we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay, so let's talk about fertilizer for a minute. We really recommend that you use an organic granular fertilizer. We prefer blood meal because it's fast and it's effective and it's a performer. You know, if you have other types of nitrogen, organic nitrogen, and you want to use that because that's what you have, that's okay too. But for a slam dunk home run, we would suggest that you use the blood meal. And you can get that at any of your independent nursery places. When you're doing container gardening, which is basically what this is, just remember that it's like any container, be it hydroponics or a regular container, you need to provide the fertilizer. So during the planting and the growth cycle of the plant, you will need to add some nutrients to this. Let's see. Okay, so this is the fertilizing schedule. So what you would do is you would bring your straw bale home in November. So in the next, few weeks, and you would find the perfect sunny spot for it. And you would set it up so that all of its little straw points are facing the heavens so that anytime it rains, water will go right down that straw. And then come February, we are going to start conditioning it with the nitrogen fertilizer. So there are a myriad of recipes and ways to do this that you can find online. This is the one that we're presenting for this class, and this is with the understanding that you're using a organic, either blood, feather, or cottonseal meal, and we do recommend the blood if you are so inclined. So you're hoping that we've had rain in February. I hope. And so you're hoping that your bale is already pretty well saturated. And if it hasn't rained for a week or so, then go ahead and give it a few good soakings. And then on day 4, you apply the nitrogen and you water it in well. And
what?
And when we say water it in well, we really
encargado o algo cuando fui al pueblo.
Hi, whoever is talking, could you mute yourself? Because Thank you very much.
So you really do have to water it in. And, you just kind of do it slowly and consistently and go back and forth and go back again and go back again. Delise, do you have any words of wisdom? Is there an alphabet song you sing while you're watering it in or anything that's just the right length of time?
It's about a gallon of water per watering is what I've read. You can go online and you can read 800 different formulas day by day, amounts of fertilizer, type of fertilizer, amount of water. It's kind of general and it's gonna work regardless. And we use blood meal because it's really high nitrogen, it's fast and it's organic. Not everybody uses organic fertilizer. So one could use grass fertilizer, commercial type, chemical type, and that works as well too. You want to definitely look up the amount to use because it's like half as much if you're using non-organic as organic. But it can have an adverse impact on the microbial activity in the straw bale. And frankly, I just don't do non-organic. So that's what that is. But this is an estimate. You will figure it out. You will know because you can get your hori-hori or your trowel into the straw bale when it's time to plant, and it won't be burning hot. Because they do get hot inside as they begin to compost.
Okay.
This is kind of a dumb question, but if I'm buying bales next week, I'm not going to do anything other than place them and then wait till February.
That's
what we're recommending because
Okay.
we can
Thank
take
you.
advantage of the rain. It might look, not beautiful if you put it on your front lawn, but if you have a place where you don't care that it's just sitting there being a straw bale that's getting wet and soggy and graying out a little bit, it will begin to condition passively. And then in February, you will just start doing this, fertilizer process. And by Valentine's Day, you'll be planting. It'll be great.
So here we have just a very basic sketch. And what we have at the very bottom is some cardboard, and that's going to serve as a weed suppressant. And then we have either chicken wire or hardware cloth, which is going to deter those charming little gophers from getting into your bale and wreaking havoc. And you can even wrap that up the sides of your bale a little bit if you are so inclined. And then you've got the rice bale with the little, straws going this way. And after you have applied your nitrogen over the schedule of days, then you're going to put some potting soil on top. And that is going to allow you to seed start, because you can either put seedlings in or you can start from seed. And we have some more information about that on the next slide, perhaps.
No, not the next one. And I want to point out that in my experience, if you put the chicken wire or the hardware cloth on top, then I always flip-flops, stub my toe on the wire, hurt myself. So I like to put it under the cardboard if I'm going to use chicken wire. And it's just so much easier than trying to underline line a bed, a raised bed with wire. And it doesn't have to be permanent. So chicken wire is okay, even though that's not going to last forever. But it's just a really quick, cheap, easy way to keep the gophers out.
Okay, all right. So
it's a beautiful drawing here.
This is a beautiful drawing. I love this drawing. So we've got a 2 bale row. We've got 2 metal rods at the end of each. It's like a fence post kind of those metal green ones that you can get at any gardening center. And that's driven into the soil. And then you've got a 2x4 affixed at the top. You can notch it and wire it in there. And then you've got some gauge wire going across so that if you wanted to grow some peas or some beans or climbing squash, something of that nature, you've got something for it to climb on. You've got a soaker hose there, which is something that a lot of people like to use when they're doing straw bale gardening. And what you could even do is you could take a segment of regular hose, run it directly to the straw bale situation, and then attach the soaker hose so that you're not soaking the area in between your spigot and where the straw bales are. And again, you'll have some cardboard underneath and some either chicken wire or hardware cloth. I was thinking about what Delise just said, and I was thinking, you know, the other thing you could do, I am a person who goes and gets cardboard like all the time. So I have a lot of cardboard lying around. So what I would probably do is I would probably go cardboard, chicken wire, cardboard, and then put the straw bales on top of that. And that way, when I want to get rid of the, when I want to pull that chicken wire out, it might be a little bit easier to get it out. So just a thought, because it, you know, might be a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, this is sort of the, no, go backwards, please. This is the very basic, you know, least amount of effort kind of thing to do. It's just a bale on some cardboard and a little bit of potting soil. I recommend that one do 2 bales when you first start. It's a little bit, it gives you a little bit more produce and it's more to work with. A soaker hose is optional, and the trellis is optional. Depends on what you're growing.
So this is a great before and after shot. When are you taking over, my dear? I'm not sure what slide number we're on.
I don't know, but I can anytime. I wanted to answer a question about blood meal that came in. Somebody wants to know, where the heck does that come from? Sounds awful. Well, it is. It's a byproduct of the meat industry. It's dried blood from animal products. And if you are a vegetarian or you don't want that kind of material in your garden, you can use cottonseed meal. Another high nitrogen source is feather meal, but that also is a, you know, chicken meat byproduct. So that's where the blood meal comes from. The benefit of it is it's just really a hot organic fertilizer. This is just showing you that at the beginning, you plant the bales. They look like bales with a little bit of green in them. They're not very interesting, but when they grow in, they can be quite lush and beautiful. Here is another example of cool things you can do with wires. This was around the corner from my house, kind of in a hidden pocket down the street. And I drove by it one day and I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was so cool. This whole little yard was full of these tunnels with all straw bale and beautiful flowers growing over them. And you could have a wedding in their yard, I swear. Anastasia mentioned earlier that you can use straw bales as a raised bed border, and you don't condition them if you're going to use them that way. You'll be able to keep them in place for probably 2 years before they start to fall apart with natural. This is actually some Chinese chrysanthemum tea flowers that are growing in this straw bale container, which has soil in the middle, and it's bound together with a rope. So that kind of helps hold it together. And I think I'm going to have it. This is after an entire year. I think I'll have it for probably 2 to 3 years, and then I'm going to have to move those flowers. But that's by withholding water. It's really easy. And this is just, you can get fancy with a watering system. You can put it on a timer. You can do a splitter. You don't need to have two hoses running down it, but this person did. They've got some very strange black fertilizer on top. And this one up here is a small space. You can see they're not oriented properly. They're on their flat side, not their tall side. So they just put bales on a piece of cardboard in a little patch of dirt in their tiny backyard, and they're growing food. And then I love this idea. Apparently a straw bale is the perfect size for a shopping cart. So if you can get your hands on a shopping cart and you need to move the garden around because you're following the seasonal light, you can do something like this. Oh my gosh, I didn't know how many inspirational photos I'd added here. This is over the top, but this is people who are really into a tidy garden and they want to make sure that they shore up or frame the bale with a little wooden structure that you can make from pallet wood, really. Or you have a proper raised bed that is built. And you can actually fill a raised bed with soil by doing a straw bale garden in the raised bed that then decomposes and turns into soil, and you can then plant in it ongoing. And then, oops, sorry, here's an example at the bottom right that Anastasia mentioned also. Elevating the bale so you have a stand-up garden. You don't have to do any bending over. It's easy on your back. So these are on some kind of crates. Again, level is important. Thank you for that, Harriet. And I always, what was I just going to say? It flew out of my brain. Oh, pallets. You can also stack pallets and then put the bales on the pallets and get it higher up. Let's talk about when to plant what. We assume that you come to this class knowing a little bit about basic gardening. So good luck with that. If you don't, feel free to unmute and ask the questions or put it in the chat. And Joy, thank you for sending the chat information back to me. We are looking at a cross section, a diagram of what's going on inside the bale and outside the bale. So here we can see roots, we can see carrots, we can see a tomato growing up the trellis, we can see potatoes. You can get 3 potatoes in a straw bale, but you have to plant them deep. They're kind of a unique one. And onions are challenging, so that's special. Over here you can see you can actually plant sideways into the bale, and you can just poke little flowers in the sides and make it look better, or have some sort of cascading nasturtiums or pretty flowers coming and spilling over the side so it hides the bale. Then we all as gardeners know that you either plant from seed or you plant via seedling. And with a seed, you're putting a nice 2 to 3 inch layer of potting soil. It's just bagged potting soil. You have completely fertilized and conditioned the bale underneath, so that's where the nutrition is going to come from. And you space the seeds as you would in the ground. It's not really any different. Cover them. And it's good to take that potting soil that you've put on top and kind of tamp it down. You want to press it down so it doesn't wash away with the first watering. When you're doing a seedling, which is probably the easier way to be successful with your very first straw bale, I recommend starting with seedlings. You take either a narrow trowel, or this is a tool called a hori-hori, and you just stab the heck out of that bale of straw and try and make a hole. Now, the first time you do it, when it's newly conditioned, that is not going to be so easy. You're going to have to kind of dig and then scrape out a little chunk and pull out a chunk with your hands. Fill that with potting soil, plant the little plant at the appropriate depth, and then cover it up with a little more soil to keep it in. Water it in well, as you would with any garden. And when you made a hole in the bale, make sure that you stick your hand in and feel it and just see how warm it is. They can get up to 100 degrees. So you don't want to plant anything in a 100-degree bale of straw. You want to let it cool down. If it's still really hot, you're going to wait a little while before planting. Josh, thanks for letting us know you're going to go. Somebody, Lee, wants to know about planting garlic. You can plant garlic in a straw bale. I would dedicate the bale to the garlic because you know at the end of the garlic's life cycle, it's going to want to dry out. So you withhold water at a certain point while it's curing at the end. So you don't want to mix and match different plants with garlic. Another benefit of straw bales, and a thing that garlic and onions love, is that there's no weeds. There's virtually no weeds, assuming you didn't get a hay bale by mistake. So that's a benefit. But I would do the soil process, and then I would just poke the little cloves of garlic at the proper spacing till they're under the soil, and they should take on. So here's what it's going to look like in the spring. So if you buy a bale in November and you let it sit around for a couple of months, and then in February you start seasoning the bale, conditioning the bale. This is your March 1st bale of straw, and it's got some nice spring greens in it, some pansies. These are chard over here, cool season crops. And this one, again, this is a couple of bales next to each other. So it's going to look like a bale of straw. It's not going to look like it's falling apart. But after you've grown it for a while, oh, and here's what you'll grow. Let me explain how to look at this chart. Some things are more cold hardy, like more tolerant of cold, usually not a big problem for us in the coastal area. And then some crops are not quite as cold hardy. They don't like a frost. So this is your spring crops. And these are types across here that like to be grown in a container before they go into the ground and go in as little plants. These are ones that you can either direct seed or you can plant them as plants. And then root crops in particular, and anything with a tap root, and other things that just don't like to be moved. Peas are one of those. Parsnips and turnips are root crops. They, yeah, spinach has a tap root. They like to be direct seeded. So you would use the soil on top, plant the seed, and do that. Potatoes is an outlier. It likes to really go deep into the straw bale. So like I said, a dedicated straw bale, it's just for potatoes, and you go down 12 inches. You dig a deep hole, you do the soil thing, and you put the potato down, seed potato at the bottom, and then fill it up with soil and keep it watered, and it will grow up. It will make lots of potatoes. And when you're done, you knock the bale over, tear it apart, and potatoes come out. It's amazing. So here we can see these bales were started at different times. Like I think this is a year old in the front. It's really quite decomposed, but it's got a nice tomato in it, and it's sitting on somebody's tiles. And the one behind it is probably, you know, half a year old. So it's going to start showing its age in the summer season. Probably not this badly. I think this is happening in some rainy climate like the Midwest. And some crops are heat loving, others are more tolerant of heat than really loving the heat. And we have the same situation where you start the little plants in containers and then plant them out versus direct seeding. Squash, pumpkins, beans, there's no reason to start them outside of the place they're going to be growing because they're so big, so reliable. And then the third season you'll get is fall, and that's all those spring plants again. And here's that picture again of a like probably half as high as it originally was, decomposing Bale, it looks dark and rich and earthy inside, crunchy on the outside, soft and chewy on the inside. It's amazing. You would never know looking at the outside of a conditioned straw bale that it looks like that inside. Spacing the plants is pretty much like it is in ground, in soil. So this is just a little idea. It's a short list. There are more detailed lists out there in the world. And the thing I wanted to transmit to you was the numbers of plants per bale. It's kind of like the other thing you might rely on is a square foot gardening guide. And that will help you with spacing as well.
Will that crop spacing chart be available?
We are going to send you the presentation. Actually, we have a link to it. Doug, maybe you could put the link in the chat again. So you can download this or access this presentation right now. And we're also going to email you the recording of Anastasia and I going blah, blah, blah on the video. There are a few things you can't do in a straw bale garden. You can, but you won't be that successful. So perennials are not recommended because this is not a permanent growing situation. This is a temporary thing. It's ephemeral. And top-heavy tall plants, if they fall over, they will tear your straw bale apart. So artichokes, I've done it. It works okay, but it turns an artichoke into not a non-perennial. You treat it like an annual. Asparagus, it takes a couple of years to get asparagus, and they need a lot of space, so that's not a good pick. Corn, it can be done, but again, it might fall over, and you only get 5 per bale, and they need to pollinate, and that's not enough plants to pollinate, and it's just silly. You can get so much more out of a straw bale with a different crop. Rhubarb, another perennial, and then oregano, rosemary, all the Mediterranean woody herbs. You could treat them as annuals again, but I think they do better in a container or in the ground. The death of the straw bale. So here is an absolutely gorgeous planting of sweet peas in what once was a straw bale, a pile of straw and composted dirt. Just lay it on the ground so you can make it look beautiful even then. And here's the true evolution of a straw bale one more time. I know you've seen this already, but straw bales looking pretty perky. Straw bale beginning to lose its form. Straw bale at the very end. Now this is the point where I say that is a fabulous raised bed wanting to happen. So I just dig it into the soil that's underneath and create a beautiful raised bed with hardly any effort. Or not a raised bed, a conditioned, humus-rich, delightful planting space in the ground. And here is one of those planting spaces in the ground that used to be a straw bale that I have now just raked into a pile and then bordered it with some little bricks. You can also use urbanite, which is broken concrete. Or you can take the straw and you can go ahead.
Chimney tiles.
Chimney liners, chimney flue liners.
Yeah.
Are these really hard to find? I can't even find them anymore because no one in Santa Cruz says chimney anymore. But they're this clay kind of tube that you can just put upright and use as a container and edge. I would love to edge with chimney tiles one of these beds, and that would be fabulous. And then you can plant in the chimney tile, as I have planted in these little cinder blocks. This lady is taking her straw bale and turning it into a compost pile, or putting it in the compost, and or mulching other plants that are in the ground. And that composted material is just absolutely gold. It does so many things for the soil. And this is a list of all the things it does. And I cannot say enough things about organic matter in soil, but that's another class. I did not manage to replace this fuzzy photo before we met. But this is an example of how you can see people putting little flowers in the side while growing a bevy of tomatoes. This is probably more tomatoes than you should grow. I think it's supposed to be 2 per bale, but there you go. Trish is inspired and I appreciate that. That's great. Link to presentation out there. And we are looking forward to hearing the lively discussion. Here's what we want. Here's what we're looking for. Lively discussion, Q&A. Okay, we got some words here on the screen. If I want to start a straw bale now, how long do I water it? If you're going to start a straw bale right now, what I recommend you do is just take it, place it, do the little cardboard thing, and leave it there until February. Don't water it at all. Let the rain water it. And that's why we're teaching it at this time of year. If you are starting a straw bale garden at a different time of year, I'm going to take us back to a slide Anastasia showed. So this is a formula. This is a step-by-step formula. The first day you water well. How much water? Well, frankly, I think if you're using a bucket in your shower, as all good Californians should be doing, to catch the water as it's heating up, you would just go out and take that bucket and put it on your straw bale every morning for 3 days. That should do the trick. And then you start applying nitrogen fertilizer. Blood meal, cottonseed meal, or some inorganic fertilizer would do. And then you need to give it a little time to dissolve and to work in. So you give it 5 or 6 days and you do the bucket of water thing again. Or you just stand and water it thoroughly. And I can't tell you exactly how long, you know, maybe 4 to 5 minutes. Spraying the hose. Then you apply a couple of more cups of fertilizer, water it again, water it for a couple of days, and then more fertilizer, water it again. So that's the nitrogen. Anybody who knows about composting knows that it takes nitrogen to break down carbon, and straw is all carbon. So what you're doing by applying the nitrogen in a compost pile, it's greens and browns. Browns are carbon, greens are nitrogen. In this case, we're using fertilizer as the nitrogen and the bale is the carbon, and that's starting the microbial life process that's heating it up on the inside and turning it into compost, which is a planting medium for you to plant your plants in. Then just to confirm here, at the end of the process, so this is a 2-week thing. Basically, it takes you 2 weeks to get from a fresh straw bale to a bale you can plant in. 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more. You do this water and fertilizer alternating thing, and then you've been only putting nitrogen on it for the first part. On day 11 or thereabouts, you start using a 5-5-5 fertilizer, and that means it's got phosphorus and potassium in it as well. And I recommend using a liquid because those 2 nutrients are not water soluble. They do not go along with the water molecule and move through the plant the way nitrogen does, and that's because of cation exchange. They are not holding on to the hydrogen and making its way through the bale, but if it's in an already liquid form, it does. So there's a product called Dr. Earth. There's a phosphorus called Tiger Bloom. There are different products you can get that are organic or inorganic, that are liquid that you can just put in a watering can with some water and put on the bale. Okay. We are running out of questions, but before I lose you, I want to tell you a couple of things that are coming up. All right, Doug, if you could copy and paste this evaluation survey link into the chat. We would really like to improve our process. We
Okay.
are always striving for improvement. And this is a little survey asking you how we did and what you would like to see us offer in terms of classes. So if you just could take a minute right after this class, click on the link of the survey, that would be awesome. And you are also going to receive an email in a couple of months. It's probably going to be a couple of months, might be weeks, but it comes from the California Statewide Master Gardener Program. And they like to ask, they do a short survey and they ask a couple of questions about whether you're using the skills that you learned in this class. And that is how they get money. It just basically justifies their existence by saying they're making an impact and gathering metrics on that. And that's how they get funding. So we want funding because we're all volunteers here and we don't get paid. And then we have another kind of complimentary class coming up November 15th. It's me again, sorry. We'll be teaching cover cropping. So this is another quick and easy way you can improve your soil and have it be ready to go in the spring. And in this, often these classes and articles on this talk about what to plant and how to plant it, and then it grows, and you know, they don't really tell you what do you do at the end. Okay, so now I've got a bed full of, in this case, buckwheat and some sort of soil builder mix. I'll talk about what you do at the end, when you should be cutting it down, what you should be doing with the residue that's left behind. Because I found that's a gap.
Say, Delise,
Yep.
I'm unable to copy that evaluation form link. I'm not sure what the issue is.
Let me do that. Okay, everyone should have that link in their chat now. And then I'll point out that the appendix, and there's my little urbanite bed, has some resource links. So this book, it's been out for a long time. You can buy it used almost everywhere, and it's great. Tells you everything you need to know. Here's a good article. This is a seed starting guide that I've produced for a number of classes, and it gives you a lot of information about what and when to grow if you're starting from seed. And then this video is kind of awesome. Oops. And nobody has asked the trick question. Nope, internal temp, 100 degrees, bottom or middle of the bale. You know, that's hard to say. I can reach in and feel it being warm. It can be warm. And in fact, things like tomatoes, peppers, squash, love love a warm environment, and they like the soil to be warm. So warm is good, but the 100 degrees somewhere inside the bale. And I can't tell you exactly where, but I'm thinking upper middle is probably going to be the first place to heat up.
Well, and some people may have a soil thermometer. You could use that and you could find out exactly how hot it is.
It's so true. There are these long compost thermometers. You can poke into it. That's a brilliant idea. I am going to ask the question that nobody asked. Anastasia,
Yes.
I am a strictly organic gardener. Are these straw bales organically grown?
No, they are not. And, you know, I called a lot of people, and no one in town is offering certified organic rice straw bales. However, all is not lost. I did find two sources in Northern California. One is Broken Box Ranch. Is that correct? Because can you see the, and they are in Williams, California. And the other one is Shane Barlow in Petaluma. And they're more expensive than a non-certified organic bale. And Williams is way, way up there. So you would have to go and fetch said certified organic bales. But one of the things that we researched and we discussed is if you are in fact getting your your straw bale in November and it's going to sit for 3 months in your yard, anything that was sprayed on that would have been sprayed well before it was harvested and baled. And then it's been sitting in your yard getting rained on. And for the types of chemicals that may or may not have been sprayed on your rice straw, the half-life has already come and gone. And it's going to be pretty insignificant amounts. I mean, very trace. And they're going to break down because that's what those particular chemicals do. And if you are deeply concerned about it, one of the things that you could do is you could do the seed method, the seed starting method, where you would take a couple of bean plants and you would take those seeds and you would plant them in the 3 inches of soil at the top of your compost, top of your bale. And the first set of leaves come out, the little cotyledon leaves come out, and then you watch the next 2 set of leaves. And if they come up and they are completely normal, then the hypothesis is there's nothing in there that's going to harm your plants, because the legume test has proven that there is no malformation of the leaves, there's no distortions, there's no, now, you know, I mean, if you had 12,000 aphids on them, all bets are off. But if you've got a fairly clean plant coming up and it looks completely normal, that's your sign that you're okay.
I am just answering a question from Catherine about, does it have to be rice straw? What, do I have to have rice? And we just like rice because it's softer. It's easier to condition. But wheat straw is pretty available as well. Sometimes you see oat straw. Those are bigger and flatter sometimes. And they just may need more water fertilizer time to make it nice and soft and plantable.
I mean, we've basically gone with rice because it's a winter.
And everybody seems to carry it. Seems to be the thing. All right, last chance for questions. We'd love to hear from you. Anastasia, it was just too easy.
Well, I hope that everyone will give it a try. It's a fun thing to do. And, you know, the lovely thing about it is that you have this terrific compost at the end of it.
Uh-oh, Joy has a question.
Oh.
The test crop, was it beans? And they're testing for germination. Did you talk about that?
No, I did not talk about it.
All right, so Joy, speak up. Unmute yourself, damn it. Excuse my French.
You said use a legume, right?
I thought you said beans for testing whether there were pesticides in it. I had an internet hiccup, and it just, like, at that word, I was like, what did you say?
Yes, legumes. So beans. Yes.
Okay. or peas then.
or peas.
So
Thank you.
basically what you're worried about is herbicides, residual herbicides that got sprayed on the grain that the straw is part of. So it's the bottom half of the grain that we're not eating, and it's a byproduct of the grain. So once upon a time in the plant's life cycle, it got, okay, Doug, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Doug's gonna drop. The plant had been sprayed, and as we know from reading the news, it's usually Roundup, right? Glyphosate,
Glyphosate.
glyphosate. Yeah. And so one way to test if there's any residual left is you germinate some seeds in the straw. You do a little test and you see if those seeds germinate, one, and if they grow some true leaves that look normal. And if so, then there's no herbicide preventing your crops from growing in your straw bale. So that's the test.
I see that Melissa says to everyone that she had a lot of seeds in her straw. So
Uh-huh.
my question would be, are you sure it was a straw bale and not a hay bale? And do you know if it was rice or wheat?
Well, I bought it from a feed store, so that's not a good sign. But I specifically asked for a straw bale. There could have been a miscommunication, but I'm thinking it has really large holes, these seeds. So I'm thinking it's maybe wheat.
That sounds like wheat to me.
Yeah. So I should be pulling that like crazy, right? Because it's all over.
Yeah, you got the chia pet going on. Yeah, once you've got that, oh, I want to mention something else. So yes, you can try pulling it. You're gonna have a problem on it's gonna compete with your plants. You might need to, spray Roundup. Just kidding. Yeah, it's going to compete with your plants, and it's just going to be a pain in the neck, and you will have to weed. It will just be a matter of weeding it. But you could start over, and you could, look at the bale and make sure you don't see any seeds. Also, you want to look and see if it's green. If it's green, if it's a kind of a light green, that is a surefire feed instead of straw. So
yeah, it was a golden yellow.
with the golden color. Okay.
Mm.
All right.
It could even be that it could have been stored in the hayloft next to, the straw bale could have been adjacent to a feed bale.
That's a good point. Yeah, I definitely will go with a nursery next time.
I always buy them at the feed store. I don't know that you can.
Most nurseries don't carry them, I don't think.
They don't carry them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I would shop around by phone. Some are definitely cheaper than others. They're anywhere from $9 to $12. And if you're buying 4, that can add up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Okay, that's it. We
All
are
right, well,
shutting
thank you, everyone.
wonderful class down. Thank you all for being here. We will send you links and information, and look for that in your email. And thanks for coming. Hope to see you again.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Anastasia. Bye.
Thank you, Delise.